The Conclave of Shadows. In a monastery hidden deep within misty mountains, whispers of something dark were heard, tales of shadows that moved on their own, and monks vanishing without trace. Miles, a seasoned investigator known for his unbreakable resolve, arrived at the remote monastery, summoned by the abbot after a series of mysterious deaths. The air was thick with incense, masking a faint but unsettling scent that lingered near the stone walls, almost as if the building itself held dark secrets. As he entered, Miles noticed the solemn faces of the monks who moved in silence, casting nervous glances down shadowed hallways as they crossed themselves. The abbot greeted him with a weary look, explaining that 4 monks had died recently, all found with fearful expressions and strange markings on their hands. Each death had been dismissed as natural causes, yet the marks seemed to tell a different story, one that kept the remaining monks on edge. Miles inspected the last monk's cell, finding it untouched since the death, with a faint smear of ash on the floor near an ornate wooden chest. Opening the chest, Miles discovered ancient scrolls covered in cryptic symbols, the language unfamiliar but charged with an eerie energy. Curious but cautious, he took the scrolls back to his room, hoping they might hold clues to explain the tragic fate that had befallen these monks. That night, a low chanting echoed through the halls, barely audible yet sending chills down Miles' spine as he strained to locate its source. Following the sound, he found himself in a dimly lit room where monks gathered around a central altar, eyes closed, their faces contorted in concentration. Gabriel, a senior monk with piercing eyes, led the chant, his voice deep and commanding, filling the room with a palpable, dark intensity. When Miles questioned Gabriel, the monk merely smiled and said they were honoring the spirits, offering no further explanation before disappearing into the shadows. The following morning, Miles sought out Teresa, a former monk turned recluse who'd left the order but lived nearby, wary of the monastery's influence. Teresa hesitated but finally revealed that the monks were part of an ancient group called the Conclave of Shadows, devoted to forbidden rituals. She described how Gabriel had led them deeper into darkness, seeking power through rites that tapped into forces beyond human understanding. Miles felt a growing unease, sensing that the monastery had become more than a place of worship, it was a haven for something sinister. Determined to confront Gabriel, he returned to the monastery, only to find that the senior monk had vanished without a trace, leaving his robes behind. The monks whispered of a hidden chamber, a place where none dared enter except during their secret gatherings, rumored to hold the conclave's altar. Late that night, Miles found a concealed door behind a tapestry, leading to a descending staircase, dimly lit by candles that had almost burned out. The deeper he went, the colder the air became, filled with a stifling silence that seemed to press against him as he neared the bottom. At the end of the staircase was a stone room, its walls lined with faded symbols and the same ash markings he had seen in the monks' cells. In the center, he found the altar, a dark, imposing structure with engravings depicting figures in shadowed robes, hands raised to unseen entities. Miles felt the weight of those figures, as though they watched him from within the stone, their gazes intent and unsettling. As he examined the altar, he noticed small bowls filled with dried herbs and dark, unidentifiable stains on the surface of the stone. The symbols around the altar seemed to pulse with a life of their own, stirring uneasily as though disturbed by his presence. Suddenly, a hand grasped his shoulder, and Miles turned to find Gabriel, his face lit by the flickering candlelight, casting sharp shadows. Gabriel's eyes held a dangerous gleam as he spoke of ancient powers, claiming they were close to unlocking knowledge hidden for centuries. Miles demanded answers, but Gabriel only laughed, telling him that understanding would come only to those who embrace the shadows fully. Gabriel's cryptic words filled Miles with dread, as he realized that the deaths weren't accidental, they were sacrifices for dark rituals. He fled the chamber, determined to find a way to stop the conclave's practices before another life was claimed by their forbidden rites. Teresa urged him to expose the truth, warning that once someone was drawn into the conclave, leaving was nearly impossible. Despite the danger, Miles returned to confront Gabriel, determined to end the cult's influence over the monastery and its terrified inhabitants. Gabriel awaited him, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to the sinister rituals that had been taking place under his leadership. Gabriel spoke of balance and power, justifying the sacrifices as a path to enlightenment, dismissing Miles' accusations with contempt. The confrontation escalated, with Gabriel taunting Miles, claiming he'd never understand the true depth of the conclave's purpose. Enraged, Miles lunged, knocking Gabriel back, sending them both tumbling into the shadows as candles extinguished, plunging the room into darkness. Amid the chaos, the chanting resumed, louder and more fervent, as if the monastery itself was alive, urging them toward the final confrontation. Miles struggled, feeling unseen hands clawing at him, the weight of countless souls pressing down, suffocating him in an otherworldly grip. Summoning all his strength, Miles broke free, grabbing one of the ancient scrolls and tearing it apart, severing the ritual mid-chant. A piercing scream filled the chamber, echoing through the monastery as the walls shuddered, and shadows seemed to dissolve into nothingness. Gabriel crumpled, his face twisted in shock, as if the conclave's power had drained from him, leaving only a broken man. With Gabriel incapacitated, the other monks awoke from their trance-like state, confusion and fear replacing their once fervent devotion. Miles escorted them to safety, leaving the cursed altar behind, knowing its dark influence was finally severed, but the damage had been done. The abbot, stunned by the revelations, agreed to shut down the monastery, hoping to cleanse it from the conclave's tainted legacy. The monks left one by one, haunted by memories of the rituals they could barely remember yet felt etched into their souls. Miles, too, felt the weight of what he'd uncovered, sensing that the shadows would follow him long after he left the mountain. In the days that followed, he struggled with restless nights, the faces of the fallen monks haunting his dreams, whispering of unfinished tales. He returned to visit Teresa, who reminded him that knowledge of such darkness always leaves scars, some visible, others hidden. Despite everything, Miles was grateful to have uncovered the truth, though he doubted he would ever be the same. His once steady resolve now bore the cracks of what he'd witnessed, the shadows embedded within his mind like echoes of a forgotten curse. The monastery, now abandoned, stood as a silent reminder of the darkness that had once dwelled within, an eerie monument on the mountain. Locals whispered of strange sights near its walls, flickering lights that vanished at dawn, as if the shadows lingered still, unwilling to leave. Miles found himself drawn to stories of similar cults, a dark curiosity that seemed impossible to shake, despite his best efforts. With each new case, he felt himself pulled deeper, the conclave's dark teachings a whisper at the back of his mind. Though he had escaped the monastery, the shadows seemed to linger in his life, shadows that no light could fully banish. Determined, he continued his work, but now with a wary eye, always mindful of the darkness he had glimpsed within those stone walls. Miles would never forget the Conclave of Shadows, knowing that some knowledge is best left buried, some mysteries better left unsolved. His tale would live on, a cautionary story of faith corrupted by ambition, and of shadows that never truly vanish, no matter how bright the light.